Ready? All righty. Good morning, everyone. Stand and say the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Start off with the agenda approval. Is there any changes? All righty. If I can get a motion.
So move.
Thank you, Shar.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Now we're on to employee recognition.
We do public input first.
Oh, excuse me. Any public input today? Are you sure? Okay, we'll close public comment. And now we'll move on to county employee recognition. In the Sheriff's Department, we have Miriam M. Ejaz, dispatch jailer, began the full-time position on November 15th, 2022.
Part-time.
That's, oh, excuse me, part-time. And that's today. Welcome. And Social Services, Megan Cox, social worker adult assistant assignment, is recognized for 10 years of service effective November 5th, 2022. Thank you, Megan. Now we're on to Highway and Survey.
Mr. Chair.
We do consent agenda?
Oh, excuse me again. Am I in a hurry? It's a big agenda today. Okay, say consent agenda. Any changes there? All righty. Can I get a motion?
Sure.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, now Highway.
Good morning.
Morning.
First on our agenda, I believe we've got our final payment. This is for Project SAP 029-616-008, our CSAH 16 project. Everything's completed, paperwork's in order, and ready to pay.
Mr. Chair, I'll move.
Thank you, Shar. And I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And our second item is review and approve quotes to replace a water heater or two at the North Shop. We have two large commercial water heaters up there. The one that is not functioning right now is used for both washing off the trucks, but also in their break area, bathroom area and whatnot, so they have no hot water on that side of the building. So we did have a company come in and take a look at it, and that one has failed, and they took a look at the other one out there too, and they said, that one's not far behind. Now, I don't know water heaters, so I don't know what that really means, and so we did get a quote on two of them. But I guess it doesn't sound like there's an advantage to go with two at this time. There wasn't like a package deal, like reduced install cost or anything like that. It's if you want one, this is how much it is. If you want two, you double it. So we can do one of two things. We can replace the one now, or we do them two, and then we're done with it. We do need two operational ones up there to get the trucks washed off. There's 4 plow drivers, 4 plow trucks and motor graders up there to wash off, and we do need 2 going. And so if you look at the quotes, we got quotes from 2 different companies, but on 4 different models. The low with Greg's Plumbing and Heating out of Bemidji, that's for a ream. The issue with this quote is it's a 40-day lead, which puts us into probably the next year to get it installed. That's a little bit long for us. So we could go with Wagner, with the Renai. All these are pretty similar. The A.O. Smiths that are a little bit higher priced, that's the models that we have in there right now. Kind of I don't know if you can say the standard of the industry, but they're really good, a good brand, but they are a little bit more expensive. You can see the one's 199 gallons, one's 150. The fourth quote there would be the exact replacement for what we have in there right now. So the third one is a little bit larger model. That's only a 10 to 15 day lead. Wagner's did not tell us what the lead is on their models. So I don't really have a recommendation other than I know we need one. And if you're willing to go with two, then we get them both done and we're out of here. But maybe the other one operates for a while and we just deal with it at that time. The downfall with that is you may have increased costs by the time you get around to it, but it is what it is, so.
Did you mention, Chad, at all how old they are?
They were when they built the building, so that was 2007?
Yeah, six, 7, right in that area.
Yeah, I was thinking 5, but anyway, yeah, so 17, 18 years old.
So if we approved one now and then one went out next year, would we still use building fund reserves to pay for it?
Yeah, we don't have a specific budgeted item for these. It just, if something with our buildings goes, that's what we pull from. And that's one of the funds that we're able to kind of build back up at the end of
Yep.
each year, so
Yep.
that's,
At the age of them like they are, I'd be leaning towards just replacing them instead of taking a chance and.
yeah. That's my thoughts too, but it's tough to know. I just don't know enough about them. But that's what they said was this one is not far behind. Makes sense, same age, same exact model, but.
And then there's a case where, say we did install a new one, and then the other one breaks down this winter yet, and then we're gonna have to go, or maybe if we, depending on which one we choose, there may be a lead time, stuff like that. Are these electric or gas?
These would be, they're
LP or?
They're propane, yes, correct, yep.
Well, with the ones with lead times and then the one with no lead time written at all, which one do you feel best with?
Well, we're comfortable with the A.O. Smith. That's worked good. I like the 10 to 15 day lead time. If we go with one from Wagner Plumbing and Heating, we don't know what that is. And so we could be dealing with the same 40-day lead time. I can try and find that out.
With this,
10, 15 days is not that bad.
Yeah, let me look at the deal here. I don't think they. No, they do not have.
I would add too, with the supply chain being like they are now, if you just do one, you run the risk if one goes out that you could be sitting a while with nothing.
So you want to go to Wagner? I mean, not Wagner, but Greg's?
Greg's
Plumbing?
with the,
Yeah.
with the, like the bid number 3,
Yep.
that would be, I think that's the safe, best responsible bid, yep.
I'll make a motion for bid number 3.
I'll second that.
Or 2 units.
2 units, yep.
The bid as it exists for 2 units.
But that's what the bid was for.
Yep, that is for 2, so that bid is $28,432.22, yep, for 2. full
And then
setups.
this would be, my understanding, the larger capacity.
Yep, it is another, this is another 49 gallons, so that'll help us out on each of those, yep.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Very good, thank you.
Natural Resource Management.
Good morning.
Good morning.
To start off with, I have 3 grant applications for ATV Trails for next year. The first item is for the Paul Bunyan Forest Riders Motorcycle Club to maintain the Martineau recreational off-highway motorcycle trail system. We have a resolution of support, which also lists the land commissioner as the fiscal agent for the grant.
I'll make a motion to approve the grant application for the Paul Bunyan Forest Riders.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. Second item is for the Timberland Dirt Devils. Same thing as this off-highway vehicle trail, ATVs. And again, the resolution of support lists the land commissioner as fiscal agent and the county to act as the local unit of government.
This one I had some questions on. I believe in their application on page 117, they state that it's for fiscal year 2024.
Yes.
So not 2023.
Yeah, that goes by the state's fiscal year,
Okay,
so this is for
not next year,
from
but the year after.
June 30th of next year
Oh, okay,
to July 1st of next year to June 30th of 2024.
okay. Because I didn't notice that in the other applications. And then also,
These are all for the same time frame. All the grants start and end at the same time.
okay. And then on page 121, paragraph 2E, it's cut off. It starts with the explanation and then it cuts off mid-paragraph. And I didn't know if that was gonna be a concern in their application.
I'm not sure which,
Let's see,
If you look on page 7 to 12,
yeah, there you go. Up, yeah, right there. 2E, trail system mapping printing.
Mr. Chair, that would not be, because we're looking at a snapshot of the application, and at the state, they'll see the entire application. This just overran the cell.
Okay,
So that box is over full,
okay,
and the view we're looking at it in is a PDF snapshot of that, and not the actual submitted application. But
Okay.
the state does have the submitted application, I'm sure.
thank you. Yeah, because there was, I think I had two other ones, same thing where the paragraph was cut off. And I was hoping there was a good explanation, so. And then the second thing, what we have up now, the red writing. State form doesn't work, so some things have been crossed out and different numbers wrote in. Can you explain that at all?
yeah, those were, of course, filled out by the club. And, this form is an online form when they fill that out. Apparently, when they filled it out, the form on the DNR website was not properly working. So hopefully, either they will get that fixed or submit a written application, do it on paper rather than on their online form. Not exactly sure. It looks like the dollar figures were not calculating properly. Looks like it may have been missing the liability insurance costs, so.
Mr. Chair, if you look at the red numbers, it says 39,380, and then go to the top and see the
Oh, yeah, you just passed it there.
submitted piece,
Yep.
the number is correct.
Okay, thank you. So with that, can we get a motion?
also move.
Thank you, Shar.
Second.
Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried.
And then the last grant application is from the Northwood Rider Off-Highway Vehicle Club, maintaining the Schoolcraft Trail off-highway vehicles, ATV trails. Again, resolution of support and listing the county land commissioner as the fiscal agent.
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, David. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried.
Thank you for those. The final item that we have, I have Stuart Crosby from SRF Consulting, who has been helping us complete a master plan for Deep Lake Park. And I will let him discuss the particulars of the plan. I think we have a final draft, so we're going to be looking for on approval of the plan, and we will then submit that to the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission for their consideration, scoring, and hopefully that will get us to the inclusion of this park into their regional park system.
Great, thank you, Chip. Good morning, Commissioners. What I have is just a few slides here to walk through a quick overview of our process and then some highlights of the master plan. But as you can see here, and you're well aware, we started concept development on this park last year, and about a year ago now, which we did with the Trust for Public Land as part of the process to get that a donation that was then gifted to the county for the property. We then spent the early part of the year going through a designation application and approval with the Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission, which was granted in August. We spent the mid part of the summer doing public outreach, which we'll get into a little bit in a couple slides. And then this fall, we've developed the master plan document. So we now are at the point where we want to seek approval from you for the master plan, which will then allow us to submit it to Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission. And upon their approval, the county then is able to start to submit for grant applications to get legacy funds. So a couple of slides here. The analysis, as you can see here, we did look at a 30-mile radius and listed all parks and recreation areas so that we had a good sense of what types of other recreation amenities are around. And our findings were that there is a lot of great recreation, but there's also a big need for many different types that this park is going to provide, including camping, both RV and tent camping, hiking, mountain biking on mountain bike trails, cross-country skiing, et cetera. So next slide, I have a couple of examples here of some of the analysis that we've done, and you may have taken a closer look at all of these, but really the existing elements of the park there on the left, and then a slide here as an example that just shows the boundary around the lake, which is part of the county's setback requirement, which is interesting because a lot of the development that's on the site right now happens to fall within that. Those are those large buildings that the old chalet that's unfortunately going to have to be removed. But we did recognize the different constraints with the setbacks. So next slide shows you the public engagement. We had 3 really good events. In total, over 440 individuals were reached, many of whom gave comments and provided input for the park master plan. So I think that's a great number, and Greater Minnesota should be, I think, pleased with that as well. So a lot of support and input that went into the plan. In addition to that, we had a technical advisory committee that provided input and direction, and we've actually changed some of our phasing based on their input as well. So next slide here. What we've done is we've identified 3 use zones for the park. We have an RV ATV zone that's about 17 acres in the southwest, which is in yellow there, the natural resource zone, which is the largest area on the north in green, and a park development zone, it's kind of in the lower center in red, 39 acres. And when you look, next slide here, Jeff, please, that will show us the RV ATV zone, which we're proposing an RV campground there that at this point we have, we're showing full hookups for this RV campground, which is something that's desirable. We'll also have sort of the standard amenities for those. It won't be a paved roadway system through there, but gravel. And then we'll connect that RV campground to the rest of the park with a trail network. You see that going over in the, going north there on the yellow. Eventually, what we propose is to have a paved trail similar to the picture in the upper right that would go along the edge of the entrance road. That's that red line that would allow people from the RV campground and also from a future Itasca Heartland trail connection to bike their way or walk their way down into the main portions of the park. That, as you'll see in our phasing, is something that we're proposing for a later time because it is an expensive initiative to do that, and we feel that waiting until you have that Itasca Heartland connection paved is probably the best time to do that. But From the whole of the park, this is the only location where motorized vehicles and RVs would be allowed. The rest of the park really is for camping and silent sports. The next slide here shows the park development zone. This is where we have the main campground. We have proposed 4 camper cabins. With each of those, we have a heated restroom building with showers. And then the main parking lot will be down there. There's one of the current buildings we feel could potentially be reused in this area and could be a 4-season trailhead building where we could have concessions. And then also we're showing, proposing a playground, a natural surface or a natural playground, as well as a picnic shelter. So a picnic shelter could be rented out for groups, and I think this will be a really popular place for families and individuals. This also becomes really the nexus of the whole park, and so if you come here to hike or to mountain bike, this is where you would start your activities and end those activities, or in the winter if you're going to be skiing. So we also have lake access here with canoe and kayaks that we're proposing off of a short dock right there. And our last area here, the natural resources zone, is the largest area. And in this area, we have proposed 6 cart-in campsites, as well as mountain biking. And I know you're familiar with that because we actually have added on 80 additional acres in the northeastern part of the park to accommodate that. We wanted to make sure that that was within the park boundary so that those could be, so funds could be used, legacy funds could be used for the development of the mountain biking system. But we also have a network of cross-country skiing and hiking trails that would go around the 2 lakes there, as well as a couple of overlooks to give people views and access to the lake. So this is the overall park concept plan. We were looking at it in pieces before, nothing really special to show here that isn't on the previous slides, but I did want to show that in its entirety, and that it does front County Road 4 on the entire west side. And the last slide here is our phasing and our cost estimate. So as you can see here, we've broken this down into 5 different phases. And the first phase really is one where those existing buildings that are not functional will be removed. We're proposing to put in utilities, as well as putting in some hiking trails and then upgrading those buildings that could be upgraded. In future phases, we're looking at installing the paved parking lot and entry road, putting in the picnic area, the karting campsites in phase 2, and then really phases 3 and 4 would be campground developments, with 3 being the RV campground and 4 being the main campground area. The 5th phase is where we've proposed to do the mountain bike trails, the overlook, and some of the other elements like the nature play area. So we've really tried to keep these phases to an amount where you could get grant dollars for those, and that's why you see them here roughly at $1 million to $2.5 million, which is somewhat achievable through the legacy funding as well as some other grant applications. But that puts the total at about 7.58. I think I can't see that far right here, but for all 5 phases in total. So I know you've been to the park. I know you've provided input throughout the process. It's been really an exciting process to work with Chip and others at the county, and I'm curious to see if you have any questions or comments.
I have one. Once regional park is designated and we apply for legacy funds, is there an application schedule for legacy funds, or do you think possibility to get that prior, maybe even like late spring or early summer?
It's a good question. So the process for getting the master plan approved, if we can get approval here, I'd like to go through actually we do have a next step slide, I've forgotten about that would kind of talk about this here. But I'd like to just do one more quick once-over with Chip on the plan, and then we can get that uploaded to Greater Minnesota Regional Parks and Trails Commission onto their website portal. That probably would be reviewed this winter and hopefully approved, I would say, by January or February is about the time frame for it, which assuming approval then does provide the opportunity to get into the application process for this next year. And we'll have to double check on that, but I think typically it's a June, do you know, Chip? I think it's
Yeah,
June.
I think they award their grants in July. So we would basically have the latter half of the year to be doing work out there. Does not leave a whole lot of time. I mean, once they award the grant, then you gotta go through the, the bidding process for all of this stuff. It would not leave a whole lot of time, but, I think you could do, some of it this fall, or next fall. Hopefully, we could get the trails ready, or at least some of them, at least, maybe the cross-country ski trails, developed quickly in the fall, and open those up, for next winter.
Okay.
So it seems to me, Chip, a little bit then if you're, while you're waiting for a decision on your grant application, you're already writing the second grant application.
Mhm.
Yes.
Into this a little bit.
And looking to other potential grant opportunities as well. So I think there are other ones beyond the legacy. I think that's probably one of the best ones, especially given their interest in this area, and I think their interest in this park too.
I just want to say thank you. I like the plan. I appreciate the work you've done, the people that are on the Technical Advisory Committee, and all those that aren't listed here, that I'm sure there's others that have put into this. So one of my questions is, we're not locked into this in a sense. I mean, this is what we'll present. This is a good guidelines, but say we get going down the road and there isn't funding available to do maybe paving a parking area, but maybe we could make a bike trail or something like that. I mean, are we gonna be able to shift around a little bit like that, not be exactly locked into exactly these steps?
No, yeah, Commissioner, that's exactly right, that this is really a master plan for your use. Major modifications or changes, if you're gonna be going for legacy funding, may require an update to the plan. And then also, as you develop a lot of this, sometimes it's nice to update that plan, say in 10 years or so, which we're working with some other clients. But generally speaking, this is just a plan that helps you in the future planning for development.
Okay, thank you.
And I think as priorities, may shift over time, you may shuffle some of those things in the phases around. You may want to move something up, move something down, depending upon what our priorities are at the time. I mean, if we're getting a lot of pressure to move those mountain bike trails earlier into the phasing process, it could be that we move those around, but, this just kind of gives us an outline of what we're looking at. We're hoping that we can kind of do it in this order, but
Sure.
it doesn't necessarily have to be.
Yeah.
Stuart, can you, I noticed on the phasing and the cost estimates, there's no dates on here.
Right, yeah.
And can you also talk about cost sharing or matching?
Yeah, so good question, Jess. So we very specifically didn't put dates on these because this is not something that has to happen. Phase 1 has to be in 1 year and phase 2 has to be the following year. Each phase may be a multiple year process. And so it could take 15 years to do full build out. It could take 5 years. It really depends on how aggressive you want to be in applying for grant applications, et cetera. Typically for legacy funds, there's a match involved with, I think is, 10 to 20%. And generally, the higher the match, the more interested, I shouldn't say interested, but the more commitment it shows from the agency. So that's something that they do take into consideration, the DNR, when they're reviewing these.
Do the original donations count as towards the matching?
I don't think they do,
Okay.
but that would
That
be
was a
something to
significant
confirm.
amount.
Yeah, that was a significant amount, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Any further questions?
Looking for approval?
I'm just gonna say, I'll need a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Maintenance.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
I just want to come to see if I can get approval to update, hopefully our last two HVAC units that's serving IT's department for keeping their equipment cool. Our biggest one is probably the one for 108, which is their main server room. If you recall earlier this year, maybe last fall, we had to replace their one in their other room right across the hall. Both of those units were both put in at the same time when the jail was built. And they're kind of outdated and they're kind of falling apart. And unfortunately, one company got bought out by another company, so they make sure they change their fittings and everything, so we just can't retrofit anything. It has to be all new units, so. Looking over this, I think we've come up with a better plan, move the outside unit that the compressor sits on the outside of the north of the jail. We're gonna move that inside like we have the other ones, so that should provide us a lot more efficiency and longevity, and hopefully in these colder months that are coming up, we won't have as many issues like we did last year of alarms going off, because as we all know, AC units, they only get to a certain point in temperature, then they say, hey, we're already cold enough, and they shut off, they don't work. Well, then they don't keep the server rooms cool enough, and then those build up heat with all the electronics in there, and we start getting close to problems with IT equipment, so we got that, that's the big one, and we got one above in the social services area that has been problematic since before I got here, so now we're trying to figure out, we've got a resolution for that one, to get that one solved as well. Hope we can move forward, get those done and installed, hopefully before it gets a little colder, a little colder.
Are you concerned, Bobby, at all with locating the compressor inside? with
No,
noise?
no, these are all newer units, and we already have, 2 of them installed now, in the basement. And they vent out into the open air space. Haven't had problems, one is with them or anything like that, and it's, been very nice. And they're like super quiet, you can't even hear them things running. One of them is right next to Rob's office, and they don't even hear it going off or anything like that. So, we've consulted with Rob and what he thinks as far as, noise and efficiencies and stuff like that, and he's 100% on board with whatever we do to make sure all of his equipment stays cool and we don't have as many propped open doors and alarms going off over the weekends or in the middle of the night because the rooms are getting too hot and stuff like that, so.
There's only one bid.
Yep, that was the only one that returned and came back through, that
Okay.
wanted anybody to, I put it out there, I call them and they say, okay, they come out and they look and then they never provide anything.
Okay.
So this is, Ackerman's been the ones that's been most responsive to coming over and doing a lot of our HVAC and plumbing stuff.
Okay.
A lot, like I say, we've had a lot of people that go out there, say, come over and take a look. They come over, take a look, give me an estimate, and then never hear from them.
Okay.
So I don't know. I think from a courtesy standpoint, you should at least let a potential customer know that, hey, you're not gonna be able to do it or not interested, but I just don't get anything. I get crickets, so.
And Ackerman's did the other ones?
Yes,
Okay.
Yep.
So we worked with them before and everything?
yes,
Great.
yep. They were well familiar with everything. Between Steve and I, we walked them through everything, what we're up against, and went through the basement to figure out line runs and stuff like that, what's gonna be most efficient and the best for an upgrade as opposed to using what we currently have. It seems to become a pretty good plan to,
How far is that room from outside wall?
what's that?
How far is that room from an outside wall?
That one, 108, is probably about right in the middle of the basement, and it goes all the way to the north side of the jail, on the outside by the little
So
radio
it's
out
an
there.
outside wall, you could just use natural.
Yeah, we looked at that, but of course, everything down in the basement's all precast, so
Yeah,
I'm
probably
going through
more
the block and stuff, so. We looked at that too, as looking how we could, retrofit if we could to use existing venting and stuff like that, and it just not gonna work very well, so. Figure if we got to go the extra cost to install new equipment, we might as well make it better for the future versus just to make it work, so.
Sure. Any further questions? I can get a motion?
Also move.
Thank you, Shar. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
I do have one other quick thing. It kind of came up yesterday. We've realized, we've come across some of the old plumbing in the basement underneath probation. As we know, the old jail has been used for several years, and all those pipes are kind of old and decrepit and cracked. We replaced a few years back a section of pipe to allow an extra toilet to be used for the probation office. However, last week, or week before, we walked through the basement and we had a big mess down there. Come to find out, we have about 60 feet of failed pipe. So again, I had Ackerman's come in to assess it. As soon as they could get out here, they come and looked at it. And we're looking at probably trying to cap that area off. It's gonna be about $3,000 to abandon those facilities in place versus about $8,000 to make one single restroom work. I've talked to Mark in probation. They are fully aware of it. They do have another restroom they can use, as they did in the beginning. When I first got here, they had one. We just kind of made things work for them so they could have a little bit of extra space, but he's fully aware. He kind of concurs. It seems to be an awful lot to make one restroom work, so I'm just bringing this for you guys to have a heads up that we're making some modifications to our lovely old jail space. Because we don't like anything ending up on the floors that's in the basement, be it clean water or dirty.
Definitely.
So just wanted to bring that to your attention.
So he's not really looking for, he's looking for kind of consensus on capping versus continuation of the service. And I think that capping the service in place, unless we have a bigger development plan for that space, makes the most sense.
That's my thoughts also.
Definitely a good idea.
Thank you all very much. Have a good day.
Social services.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, the first item up we have today is our MnDOT, our contract with MnDOT, or the funding contract with MnDOT for the Heartland Express. I did include a spreadsheet that just kind of went through kind of all the different things that we've, the amount of rides and et cetera that we've gotten. And it's pretty amazing to see the services that we've provided to the citizens. And, you know, in this contract, there is a local match portion the last couple of years that hasn't been just because of COVID, et cetera. This year there is a local match. However, if you look at and I think I had written in the agenda item report that our fares cover that plus. So this is actually a revenue generating for the county. It's small, but it's not, and again, the funding is 100%. So just looking for an approval to continue that contract.
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And then the second item I have is the Pine Manor Inc. Contract. We hold a contract with them for providing the services. I do have Rachel here from Pine Manor if you guys have any questions. But this is just a formality that we pay the same rate. It's for them to be for a 2-year contract with them. And what is the rate? $325 per day. So
I appreciated the history from 21 and 22. Thank you for putting that in, and I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Shar. Thank you, David. And then was this an increase then over last year, the reimbursement?
No, I don't believe so. No, it's the same per.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Human Resources. Good morning.
Good morning, Chair, members of the board. Human Resources, item before you, 9A is the DDA's ongoing maintenance of classification and marklet implementation. History is that we've gone through the past couple of years where we've looked at every position through the county and did the classification with that, starting out that we originally had 50 grades within our classification. We, in the last couple of years, had that reduced down to 36. And now before you today is the request that we have continue further of our classification and reducing down to 22 grades. So the request is to approve DDA's reduction of grades from 36 to 22. In the grading system, it will be numbered, actually number 5 through 26. And then implementation of a market analysis as provided by DDA in their 2022 wage scale, which is attached as well too. This wage scale will be effective 11/20 and would then authorize action to authorize the Human Resources Director to process these adjustments of the classifications with the following provisions. Placement would be paid, would be on the said scale, will be equal to or next higher to current step. Any employee currently on step 3 or higher will be credited with 1 extra step, not to exceed the compensation grade range. And then an employee that has not been awarded their 2022 step increase as of 11/22 will be placed at receive their step on 11/22, and then the classification would be implemented for them. So the request before you with the wage scale attached, and then also attached is each of the county position with what their current DDA grade is and where they will go with the new DDA grade of classifications of 22 grades, numbered 5 through 26.
And I would provide some additional context as the Personnel Committee was reviewing this, and then we had conversations about this. We had 3 different options we put forward relative to this grade, and this one solved the most problems. One, it increased the minimum pay for a county employee. So step 1, grade 1, step 1 is significantly higher, I think $3 than grade 1, step 1 was on the old scale. It pushes us from 100% of the market to 110% of the market as of the study that was done last spring. And it provides market adjustments to individual positions that were out of line with market position here. So this is the thing that we're having to fund across next year with fund balance and into the second and the third year. But this is also the item that we needed to remain competitive. Just for an example, if we did not have this change and that market adjustment relative to our deputies would be paid at the top end and the bottom end $3 to $4 an hour less than Beltrami and Wadena counties. And with this change in the schedule, we will be competitive with Beltrami and ahead of Wadena, just for 2 points of information and interest. So this is, as much as we heard private companies had done adjustments last year, done a 3% increase across the board to their pay or whatever that they had done. Beltrami last year did an adjustment back to July of 2022 when they approved that and then moved forward with their contracts. So this is the secondary adjustment relative to the market, and it's also the adjustment relative to making sure that to getting our classification system in line with our organization as we had originally planned when we started with DDA. So those are the things that are in here. This is what costs the money that's not funded in next year's budget that we're having to account for and accommodate for. This is what we're going to be allocating the rest of the ARPA dollars against is buying into this. But it solves many problems, makes us competitive. Our pay will not be the reason that we can't find employees going forward.
What ended up being the average increase for an employee with this bump?
Sure. They ranged anywhere to say from a 1% in certain areas up higher to 3-4%.
There were some that got the market adjustment that were higher than that. I think on average, the number is 4 to 5 after we rotated in this, this second item. Any employee currently on step 3 would be, or higher, would be credited with 1 extra step. Before we did that, there were people that were looking at a 1% increase with this rolling, and now I think the minimum is about 3.5 or 4%. And the high is really relative to market adjustments. There were positions that are getting 9 or 12% adjustments. I think it's 5% on average.
We had that with the COLA that would be coming in January, 4%, and so that'd be about an average of 8%.
About 7.5 is, I figure, what the overall is.
Okay. So, yeah, with inflation up at around 8.5, I mean, so we're staying competitive, in my thoughts.
So using some of the leftover ARPA funds to shore this up, how is that going to affect our budget next year? What kind of percentage is that gonna attach to us next year?
Yep, and so I think we've talked in a couple of different places that if we capture new tax capacity, which averages 1.5 to 2% a year, we anticipate a secondary bump from Enbridge on the value of the oil flowing through the pipeline. But I think that we're probably looking at 3.5% plus whatever our new tax capacity is. So that might be 5.5 or 6 to 6.5% overall, but half of that would be coming from new tax capacity. So I really think that in '24 and '25 we can balance with relatively reasonable numbers.
At least in the short term, the day of 2 to 3% seems a little far-fetched for a little, the near future anyhow.
Those days will return.
I think one of the purposes of the long-range financial plan will be to identify that we'll always be looking to capture new tax capacity plus whatever 2-3% of additional, 1 to 3%, 2 to 4% of additional levy increase, but always capturing the new tax capacity because that doesn't affect people who haven't done anything to their homes. And then a modest overall increase. But yeah, if we look at our compensation budget this year, it'll be $23 million, and our levy is 19.1, but if 1.5 of that is being set aside for other, then we're at 17.6. So we're down to, we would really want to have a closer ratio of levy to compensation budget. This is a big step. When we look back, I think last week when we looked back, we saw that the compensation budget had a major adjustment 3 years ago, which was, the last time we negotiated. So every time we negotiate, we have kind of a bump, and then we have modest increases in between. So this cycle is not that unusual, although the numbers are bigger this time because the market has changed more this time.
If there's no further questions, can I get a motion?
Also move.
Thank you, Shar. And
Go ahead.
I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
The second item before you then is moving forward then with 2023, since we're here today in compensation. The request for the 2023 compensation schedule for non-union employees is to approve the attached 2023 wage schedule for non-union employees and be administered per the personnel policy administration with that. And that is as shown on the schedule, that is a 3% increase for 2023.
4%.
3 and 23, 4 and 24.
Oh, okay, got it.
Those are what we did in November. I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you, Shar. Thank you, David. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sheriff's Department.
I have is to be requesting approval for the purchase of our software, which is the heart and soul of the sheriff's office. It is Pro Phoenix, and we put a user committee together, and it was about a year-long comparison of different, outfits that were out there. And our current computer system it's going away. It's end of life. We just got notice from the company, and we've had a lot of issues with it. They're not getting things fixed, and it's simply, time. It was bought out by another company, and it was time. So as you'll see, the numbers for Pro Phoenix, where the funding is, we actually used a lot of funding from as you'll see, our conceal and carry fund. We're gonna use 60,000 of that, which will be a good use of that. Our jail canteen fund, 37,505, and then you'll see the other breakdown as well, the E911 monies. So when it's all said and done, the sheriff's office share of this will be 247,515. And this is a shared system with Park Rapids Police Department and Akeley Police Department. And the cost breakdown is based on the number of users, basically is what we did. So, so I'm requesting the board to allow us to purchase that from Pro Phoenix.
And Corey, I must have missed it. Where is the fund for the county portion coming from?
So the portion that's unpaid is showed in the capital fund. There's $65,000 in 201 for sheriff and 35,000 in jail, something like that. It's about 95,000 shown. And those are included in capital costs that we've set aside. Last week, we talked about 1/3, 1/3, 1/3. And at general government this afternoon, I'll have a conversation that shows that we can accommodate that $95,000 capital request in the 1/3 of 2023 expenditures and be okay if we make certain decisions about the solid waste costs. So right now, I'm showing that we'll be spending less than $500,000 on county current capital in 2023, including this, and 1/3 of the radios that were requested, spreading that over a 3 years period of time, that we'll be able to do that and still have money to save for future and still have money to allocate for economic development. But the balance of those costs are in the current IFS budget that you have.
Thank you.
And these numbers actually came in substantially less than what we were thinking, what we were initially planning on. And the annual maintenance cost is far less than what we're paying now, which is very good, so.
How much, Corey, was in the conceal and carry fund as of now?
It was north of 100.
Yeah.
I don't remember the exact amount off the top of my head, but,
I'm glad we're able to find a use for some of that.
Yeah,
because it just
exactly.
Sits there.
yeah. Yeah, so yeah, we did put it to good use here, so.
It was nice to see you used a variety of
Mhm.
fund balances here. I
Yep.
appreciate that.
Because some of those are designated, or restricted funds, and so when you can find a way to technically be able to use them, we'll use them, so.
It helps. Thank you.
Yep.
So can I get a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, thank you. That's the only item I had, unless the board had something. Nothing? Okay, thank you.
We're all the way down to administrator.
Do I have the executables for that then? We just need to get it done before the 15th to lock in that price, right? Okay. Okay, very good. Thanks, Scott. Mr. Chair, the only item that I have, well, I do have two items for action, but the first is related to the ECPN application relative to the operation of Heritage Living Center. We have, I'm going to make this bigger so I can read it. Our current annual ECPN rate, or our per rate is 11, I want to pull this up on the other computer.
24, I think.
currently covering that at 1124, which provides a cash benefit to the heritage operation of $79,000. If we maxed that out, the max per day has been set at 4391, which is a significant increase. We would have $176,000 of additional cash. Basically, this is buying a coupon. It's buying a 50% off coupon for this. But right now, I think that we're budgeted at last year's rate of 1124 and not at the rate of 4391. If we went down to this worksheet, we would see that our share at the $43 would be $180,000, but we'd end up with $272,000 of additional revenue. That would come at a cost because we're not budgeted for that. So, I know Dave and Shar have some experience with that. This is the time where you prepay for your meal and you get it 50% off, right? So this is a discounting that we do, a program that we do that allows us to receive revenue back from the state to offset operating costs. The degree to which whether you participate or the degree to which you participate is really up to you.
And this assumes that we're at our current occupancy of 35. If that went up, which is a good thing, but you'd also be paying more. So there's two concerns with that, and that is the one I just mentioned. If occupancy goes up, this number grows too, that the county would contribute. And the second concern is kind of a budget buster. Positives are, again, you've got somebody to match your funding. If your concern is that Heritage may not cash flow, it would be a good choice because you'd save yourself 50%. Otherwise, you would just fund at the level you currently are. So that's kind of the thing you're dealing with. If you're a proponent of the public subsidizing the nursing home to continue to operate, this would be the best way to do it, because the state would pay 50%. So, what's the right answer at this particular point in time?
Yeah.
That's what I'm grapple with, And a couple other pitfalls with it is, let's say you were to go directly to the maximum there, you can see the $79,213 increase to private pay. So the few residents that we have at private pay get walloped pretty hard.
Whereas the one budget change that was made by Heritage relative to marketing and advertising was to add approximately $100,000 in marketing and advertising. So one possibility would be to kind of split the difference from 1124 to 4391, which would provide the additional revenue to offset that expense. That's just somewhere in the midpoint. Whether that would be approving at last year's maximum rate, which was 2309, would roughly offset that additional expenditure. But it would double the county cost from last year and from what's budgeted. So we'd basically be taking money from our fund balance and throwing it against their operational capacity. But we'd be throwing twice as much against it.
It goes back to my comment earlier, if you think it's gonna be a cash flow, you're gonna be doing that anyhow.
Yeah.
So that's what you're kinda, when, I guess, part of me kinda looks at it as an insurance policy against negative cash flow.
Is it currently negative cash flow?
Yes, still yet, at this particular point in time, because, we're just into the new budget.
The 23 budget did show a positive cash flow of the net of operations of about 1%. that was eaten up when we added the when we changed the marketing. But we also hope that changing the marketing changes the actual numbers from the conservative estimates that the budget was built on.
And it shows the 1% profit if you take out depreciation.
So if we find next year at this time that we get at a pretty significant positive cash flow, we can choose not to.
Possibly.
That was gonna be my question.
I mean, if the budget holds to be true.
And they're gonna be trying to
Oh,
get
yeah.
to, okay, good.
They're already seeing a little improvement.
Yeah, there's
You
some,
know, hiring instead of using traveling, and they've been able to do short-term stays, which generates revenue.
Would this in any way affect their motivation to improve positive cash flow?
I don't think so, because it's, you know, based on what we were losing and what we're trying to get to, that's about half of that, if you did the max, and I don't see we're in a position to do the max. I mean, that would hurt the private pay people pretty bad. But about halfway, you're talking maybe an extra, depending on what the census does, but you're talking maybe an extra $80,000 to $150,000 in cash flow if we went to, say, $20, $18, $20 instead of 11.
And so where were you proposing we would come up with the extra money in the budget?
No idea.
It would be a fund balance. It would be a fund balance issue.
Keeping in mind, again, you know, if the budget doesn't turn out like it is, you'll be pulling it out of fund balance anyhow.
I know, because we don't have
So
anything
that's-
budgeted for,
The challenge, I mean, the opportunity here is that this financial support is doubled by somebody else's money. And if we don't do that in the end of the year and the performance isn't there, we're gonna be paying all of that out of our money. So it is a best guess.
Ultimately, if you're gonna get to the point where you wanna keep it county operated, you're gonna probably have to subsidize it with taxpayer revenue at some point. And like I said, this is the best way to do it, but you really would have to get to the maximum allowed. So do you start working your way there now, slowly? Because to do it in one step, it's, I'd say the 3 or 4 private pay residents we have will get walloped.
The safest thing would be to leave it at the current rate.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing, thinking about the future, would be to make an adjustment towards what's allowable.
Yeah, the only negative of leaving it at the current rate that you're rolling with is if we have a negative cash flow, you'll be subsidizing that difference with 100% county dollars. That's the only negative.
Can I add a comment? I was listening. Currently, the payments for the ECPN come out of the 806 department, which is reserves. Just so that you're already aware of that,
Can
and
I-
we do track that.
Yep, can I confirm that that amount is budgeted and the amount would be?
It's not a budget.
Oh, it's not a budgeted item, okay.
so even the current rate isn't budgeted.
No.
What that was.
Then it would probably make more sense to leave it where it is,
Probably.
to have some impact. And if the 1% net of operations comes true, then we're in good shape. And if it doesn't, then that's a risk we take for later.
So the current rate was 20, what was it again?
1124.
1124.
Based on it's not much, I think I'd leave it where it's at.
Do you need a motion for that?
I'll make that a motion, to leave it at 1124.
I'll second.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Tom. Any further discussion? I guess you guys helped clear it up, because after reading all this stuff, my question was, will this help Heritage County? That was my question, if it would help, but now with Kay's input.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know how we can do more since it hasn't been in the budget here.
So, just thinking out loud, if the county retains Heritage in the future, we would have to look at handling this different. So it would be using budgeted dollars included in the levy.
Then you would want to get to maximizing this to whatever is allowed as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And that may be a decision we'll have a better picture of later this,
Yeah.
next year.
At this
Yeah.
point in time next year, we would budget for that amount, and we would consider an increase relative to that.
Yeah, I would say next year we should be budgeting in the 20s.
So as it hasn't ever been budgeted, so that it also was not levied for, we simply took it out of reserves each month.
Yes.
Well, if there's no further discussion, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
The final item, and here's a point of conversation, at the last meeting, we talked about setting a public hearing date relative to a proposed THC ordinance. Talking with Jonathan, he didn't, and my recommendation was to not have that conversation until after we cleared the budget process. And his estimation was that we would set that public hearing date sometime in mid-January. So I would put that on the agenda for a December meeting to set the date on that, once I clear that up with him, as far as what that date is and what that date is that works for you. So just to make sure, because I've had to communicate to several people about, they thought that was gonna be on this morning, which leaves us with setting the date for a public hearing for the 2023 fee schedule. And the proposed date is to do that at 9:30 on December 20th of this year. So we would do that, have that public hearing if there is any, if there are any public comments, and set the date for that public hearing, and we'll post that notice for that. And then we would adopt the fee schedule the same day that we're adopting the final budget and levy. So I would need somebody to make the motion.
I'll move to do that.
Thanks, Shar. I'll second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
And then very briefly, we will have a general government meeting scheduled to be at 11 o'clock this afternoon, or this morning. But we could start earlier if we need to, and we can get the other members here. And the issues on that would be a review of the policy of the capital plan. I don't anticipate that we'll actually bring the policy forward for approval until next spring or early summer relative to next year's budgeting. But we will be looking at the 2023 allocation and proposal for how we're going to spend that, looking at that balanced against the levy summary and how we're going to, 3-year payback, how we're going to get to balanced on that. And then again, have that conversation about the solid waste fund and how, if that's going to be fully self-supporting, or if there's going to be some levy contribution to support that, or if we just have the ability to help them with some things that they would pay back. So we'll have those conversations at that meeting this morning. And then a reminder, you all got an email about the Hubbard County Township Association next Monday at 7 o'clock at White Oak Town Hall. And then I would answer any questions that you might have.
I guess while we're at it, and we're talking about meetings, should we decide who's going to be at the department heads?
I think it's my turn.
I was thinking the same thing.
Okay.
Otherwise, anything else? Okay, thank you. Committee reports. Who would like to start?
Again,
David?
got one item, filled in for
For me?
Ted Shar at MRC, Minnesota Rural Counties, yesterday, and picking a new executive director, and there were 3 firms that came for second interviews. Immediately, we were able to settle it down to 2, pretty even. And then after much discussion and stuff, they ended up settling on Capitol Hill Associates. So that'll be the new executive director for,
Effective January 1.
yep.
Yeah, so the meeting in December, Sunday in December, just before AMC, that'll be AMC running that meeting then still?
I think so.
Okay. What kind of, I know I was leaning, well, Weber Johnson, but I knew that the candidates that they had were all pretty strong.
You know, there there were a couple differences that kind of as the conversation went along, it was a really good conversation because it kind of moved people around and who they would settle on. Probably the strength of Weber Johnson is public relations. I mean, you can see that in some of the work they've done, have done. Where Capitol Hill, their strength probably would be more in managing the organization. And so it kind of really came down to, in my opinion, you know, the PR part is good, but that costs money, and a lot of money. And will MRC ever be in a position to really do public relations to that degree that Weber is used to doing? I'm not so sure. You know, but if you don't have a well-oiled machine, you're gonna get nowhere. So we need to be an efficiently run organization in order to be effective, and I think that's probably the place to start. And I think that's kind of where everybody kind of settled in, is like, get our own house in order, get very efficient at what we do, and go from there.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Is that it? David, that's it?
that's it.
All righty. Tom?
Well, the only one that I have is with the Mental Health Board, Local Advisory Council. Just wanted to mention that Christina Halls from Social Services and Adult Care said that they are in need of volunteer drivers for persons who are have medical assistance. They will have to kind of make an appointment or something like that. So if anyone, you know, like maybe listening, or any of you guys know anyone who would like to help with that, they do need drivers. The reimbursement rate is at 62.5 cents per mile. They have to fill out a form to get that, and the person, and got to make sure that the person that you're driving is on medical assistance. Just wanted to mention that because they need drivers.
Yeah, I know that's that's one of the calls that I've gotten in my district, is people needing medical appointments and not being able to find rides there.
Yep. But you can get reimbursed at a decent amount, 62.5% per mile. And if you do it on your own without filling out this form, or you take, yeah, the reimbursement rate is much less for someone who's not on medical assistance.
Yeah. Okay. That's it?
Yep,
All
that's
right.
all I got.
Shar?
The only thing I had is, I don't know if any of you listened to the Prime West meeting on Zoom last Thursday. After they did the initial with anyone that was invited, we went into closed session and came out and voted to appeal the lawsuit that is going on with DHS. And Itasca County and South Country also voted to appeal.
Good. All righty, and that's all you had?
That's all I had.
All righty. And for me, this is one of those rare times where I had no committee this last couple weeks. I did last night, was asked to attend the Schoolcraft Township meeting. There was a total of 10 of us there, which for Schoolcraft Township is a lot of people. And one landowner brought forward, he would like to see a lot of the trails in that closed up there. Chip had helped me out, gave me a map of Schoolcraft Township showing what trails are motorized and which are non-motorized, which surprised me. I mean, I've lived there since 1992 and didn't know we had any that were closed and designated for walk-in only. And like I say, I've lived there since 93. But another concern this resident had was he didn't like people camping there. And I told him that I don't remember if it's a county ordinance, but it's, I couldn't remember if it was 7 or 14 days you could camp on tax forfeited county land. But then after that time period, you had to move at least, I believe it was a mile or 2 miles from that area. He didn't know about that statute or ordinance or whatever it is. But then again, he asked who watches over that kind of stuff, which I told him I would guess it'd be our sheriff's department and our land commissioner, but I thought that was a pretty good question. There was also another couple of residents that would like to see it just be walker hunting trails in the refuge. Some saw the refuge as a sanctuary, which it's not a sanctuary, it's a refuge. There's refuge wildlife management areas, and then there's wildlife sanctuaries, so there's all different classifications. And I told them that was decided by the state of Minnesota, what designation it has, not the township and not the county. And I also made the comment about some of the restrictive things, gates to close trails and stuff like that. I just kind of asked them, I didn't know where the funding was gonna come from. But I did encourage them, if they wanted to, I said they can go onto the county website, see how to get on the agenda to get in front of all of us to speak. I don't know if that will happen or not, but I invited them to come. Whether they will or not, I don't know. We'll find out.
I will share with you that the snowmobile trails in that area are very popular with people.
Yeah.
Used a lot.
And I can understand some of their frustration. I mean, you've got a segment of the population that maybe, if they want to say, abuses what's out there, but you can't shut everybody down. And I think that they could have a full-time conservation officer in Schoolcraft Township, especially like opening a rifle season. Mike Cross did actually stop in there, the local conservation officer, talked about the number of people that he caught in the refuge wearing blaze orange and carrying a rifle, not realizing they weren't in an area they couldn't hunt. And how can that be improved? Mike talked about if the township would put up big blaze orange signs at entrance points in the township to kind of make it pretty aware that you're not supposed to be rifle hunting in the game refuge. Then he would be able to easily write a lot more tickets for that. But that's like I say, something I had last night.
Are there currently signs up?
They've got the state game refuge signs, and that's it. And that was my thought, is I was on the township, Schoolcraft Township Board. There's an agreement with the township and the DNR where they make sure that the boundary is, I can't remember the wording, but basically that the boundary is easily defined and that they would have signs every so often. I know that on the east side where I live, that the boundary is 118 for a stretch, and then it turns into a minimum maintenance road. Then it's a wide open, like a forestry trail all the way down to 44. And then from there, it detours because of Rat Creek, or I don't remember the name of the creek down there. So I know in that portion, it's well signed, but there again, it just says state game refuge, and a lot of people aren't gonna make the effort to see what that means.
I was just gonna say that, even though it's their responsibility. So if that's state game refuge, no hunting,
Something like that, yeah.
yeah.
And even, I know years ago, the DNR did put up an extra sign that talked about there is private property owners in the refuge, so to respect their property rights and stuff like that. So I appreciated that, but they weren't very good signs that degraded over time, and now they aren't existent anymore, so,
So part of it might be ignorance on,
yes. And with that, if there's nothing else,
I would just note, and we do not have any newly elected officials, but County Government 101 is being provided by AMC in January, late January of next year. If anybody's interested, it is not limited to newly elected officials down at the Intercontinental Hotel. So if anybody's interested in attending, they should coordinate with Denise.
yeah, I know I haven't touched on all the boards yet, but I know the Mississippi Headwaters Board that I'm on, that's 8 counties, will have 3 new members there. And then Neil was with Cass County, but Neil's the second vice chair, whatever, with AMC, so Scott's been coming in for Cass County the last few months. So we'll have almost a half turnover starting next year.
with the election too this fall, well, the candidates that MRC mentioned this, but there is actually significant turnover in the state legislature too. A lot of new faces will be there too.
Okay. That can be good.
I'd like to say my trip, there's one that I never haven't been to yet, and that's that legislative conference in February.
And that may be with the new turnover in St. Paul, that might be a more productive meeting.
Yeah, I'd like to go to that. So maybe keep
I
that in mind.
haven't seen the registration for the legislative conference yet, but it'll be coming soon.
That would be nice too, because hopefully, and you know, it's fully back in person now too, where you actually
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
get assigned to
Yeah,
go
make
see
some-
some
Make some
legislators.
connections.
Yep. Speak to the issues we're dealing with out in rural areas.
Yeah, it's amazing those side conversations that can get accomplished.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, make them aware. Alrighty. Well, if we're done, we'll get a motion to adjourn.
I'll move.
Thank you, Tom. And I'll second. All those in favor?
I
Aye. We are adjourned.